3rd and 9. Garoppolo in trouble, pressure coming, he is sacked for the safety. Frank Clark came flying around, and it's a 14-point lead.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? This is KCSN Update, your daily Chiefs podcast and video from us here at KC Sports Network. I'm BJ Kissel, founder of KCSN and former Chiefs insider and sideline reporter. And it's Tuesday, which means we're going to be joined by The Athletic's Nate Taylor for our 5 burning questions following the Chiefs' impressive win over the 49ers last Sunday. And coming to us still from the West Coast is Nate Taylor from The Athletic. Nate, how is it going? How is the view from Levi Stadium of that beautiful beatdown that we saw the Chiefs put on the Niners?
Oh, that's a gorgeous way of putting it, BJ. It was captivating. I think, and I wrote about it a little in my story in The Athletic, but just I think Niner fans were really energized by seeing Christian McCaffrey in a 49ers uniform, seeing Joe Montana and Jerry Rice in the building. And then you're up 10-0. And this happens to a lot of NFL fan bases and teams where you go, this is the week. We got them. We were prepared. We got the turnover early. We're up 10-0. BJ, people left the stadium wearing Niners attire midway through the fourth quarter. Like, I don't know if there's another team in the league that can sort of produce that level of like about faceness. The idea of like, all right, we're basically starting the second quarter at a disadvantage, and then we're actually asking the other team's fans to do something else so they don't see the final snaps. It's remarkable. There's really no other team in the NFL I think quite like this. But for the Chiefs to do it this particular way, heading into a bye week in sunny California, this is probably going to be one of the more memorable games of the season, just because it was coming off the Buffalo loss. And now you have a better idea as to what to expect from this team when they're executing, when they're focused, and when they don't just make mistakes. Against a team that I think still has a very good chance of making the postseason themselves in the 49ers, largely because the AFC West is a bit tenuous right now, even with the trade for Christian McCaffrey.
There's so many great stats that come out of these games, and we talked about it over the last couple of days, but the stat of Patrick Mahomes' winning percentage when down by 10 points, being second best in the NFL overall for everybody else. You spot him 10 points, he's still better than your quarterback. He's still better than your team. Yeah. The stats are unbelievable. Chiefs PR staff, Ted, Brad, and Sydney and Luke and the whole crew, they have their work cut out for them every week, coming up with these records and stats and all these things that are going on. But Nate, for somebody obviously who's there in the locker room talking with the coaches and players all the time, give me like your favorite moment from being there on Sunday that maybe for those of us that are sitting at home watching on TV didn't get to see.
Yeah, so it's not the first game and it's not the last game of the season. So you have to sort of treat these things like chapters in a book, right? And we don't know how the story is going to end, of course, because obviously they still got 10 games left in the regular season and obviously whatever their postseason run is. So you don't want to get too high necessarily, but I just thought this game, especially coming off the Bills, because you can't play that team again unless it's the postseason. So really, if they're your biggest threat in the AFC, much of the rest of the season is about how much can you improve between when you first saw the Bills and potentially when you might see them again in the postseason. Your first chance to show improvement is the next game. It's the San Francisco 49ers, who are, again, were the top-ranked defense in yards allowed, per game. A offense that was getting healthier with Trent Williams being back, with Christian McCaffrey into the fold. They were getting a little bit more dynamic. It wasn't just going to be all Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Sometimes you go into the locker room and you only want to ask guys one question. because it is relevant to each guy you ask it to who plays the game. And so the question I basically asked, as you go around and there's guys that are, really happy, and there's guys that are getting extra treatment, right? Like I think I saw Jared McKinnon getting treatment from the training staff. Nick Bolton, hey, even though I just played this game and had a relatively good day, like I just want to make sure my body's right going into the bye week. What do I need to do now after feeling, something in my midsection? There's Frank Clark, who's just like happy, but also like still in game mode, which I kind of love those players, because it's like there is no such thing as a 10-minute cool down. Like I just played football, and like I'm really happy and like still kind of like in like game face mode after even a dominant win where he was obviously a major contribution towards that victory. But I just asked guys like, hey, where do you feel like you showed most improvement today, whether you individually or you as a team? And the reason why you ask that question is because you kind of have an idea that they're going to have different answers. It can't be one answer for everything. So for a guy like Joshua Williams, it's, hey, I actually took what I learned in the first, as a first-time starter last week, and I played better. I kept my eyes toward the ball, and I made an interception. I love Creed Humphrey's answer to me, which was, I think, the first quote I put in the story, but just like, we were physical and we finished plays. And that's what we didn't show a week ago against the Buffalo Bills to the way that they would have liked. And then, of course, Patrick Mahomes just says, like, this tells me that we can get better and better as the season goes along, which, again, is kind of what the rest of these 10 games are. Obviously, you want to win your division. You want to obviously get as best of a spot in the AFC playoffs as you can. But it's really about improvement to make sure that you are at your best in January. And it's a journey to get there. So I just thought, whether it's Isaiah Pacheco, I don't know if I believe him, BJ, but Isaiah being like, I took the kickoff and they were like, stay on the field. And I was like, no one told you were starting? And he was like, no. I was like, well, we all knew this. I mean, I had the stats to prove why such a move was relevant, or maybe something that you could go to. But even him saying like, hey, again, patience, making that first guy miss, moving forward. For a lot of guys on the team, it was just, not only was it good to win, but we were better in that game, despite being down 10 points, than we were in the home loss to the Buffalo Bills.
I love we talk about improvement in Patrick Mahomes and what this offense can do, because I feel like in a lot of ways they've spoiled us, because they go out and there have been gripes, about the Chiefs offense this year, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's the running game, the receivers getting separation versus man coverage, all things that we've talked about and everyone talks about it because it's relative to what we think they can do. And the whole time they've still been the number one scoring offense in the NFL. It's like, how spoiled are we that we're sitting here talking about all these changes and all these things that have to get done? I was really hoping that you would have been there for Frank Clark. And I'm going to tell anybody that's listening to this with children around, go ahead, earmuffs, go ahead and put them on him, because I love Frank Clark so much after games, because they asked him, like, I don't know what the question was, but his answer was something to the effect of, yeah, they were talking all that shit. We just beat the ass. Like, it's just, he tells you exactly what players are thinking. He just actually says it a lot of the time. But gotta love Frank post game after wins like that. Always telling it how it is. But Nate, let's get into the 5 burning questions here, as we're 8 minutes into the show and we haven't even started the burning questions that I've got for you as you're sitting out there in San Francisco. So we've seen areas throughout the year so far this season on the defense, areas that we were worried about, whether it was pass rush. We knew the young defensive backs, it was going to take some while for them to be, to get up to speed, to get that experience. Guys like Josh Williams, like you were just talking about. And then we just talked about number 1 offense in the NFL. So a week before the trade deadline, do you think the Chiefs need to make a move to go and win a Super Bowl?
On the defensive side of the ball.
Either side. Do you think that there is an area that they have to address? Not that they're going to, or not that it would lead to it, but do you think they need to make one to win a Super Bowl?
I love how you phrase it. Like, do they have to? Because that is the question I think that'll be really discussed between now and the deadline. On basically it's Halloween, folks. Because you have to put it in, and the league has to be aware of it the next day on November 1st. I want to say yes, and this might be a bit of recency bias to some degree, right? Could the Rams have won a Super Bowl without Odell Beckham Jr. and Von Miller? Maybe, if everything falls right. I still have, I mean, Aaron Donald at times was just a video game in terms of dominance last year. And look, Cooper Kupp was open all the time, but it did help to have another weapon alongside Cooper Kupp and another pass rusher alongside Aaron Donald. I don't know if the Chiefs will make two moves similar to that, obviously. But I do get the sense that to win a Super Bowl, to maybe just really get the Bills another time, to prevent them from another Super Bowl, you might need another pass rusher. And that's asking a lot. Carolina, and we've talked about this before, BJ, they have most of the leverage right now. That might change as we get closer to the actual deadline, which I believe is 3:00 Central Time on November 1st. But yeah, I think they could probably use another pass rusher. That would lessen the role, and would probably end your prop bet. Sorry, BJ. It would probably end any chance for George Karlaftis to get on a streak after the bye week.
He just needs to average 1 sack a game for the rest of the year.
For the rest of the season, that's all.
It'll be fine.
Him, Jared Allen, Derek Thomas. One of those guys in the Hall.
It wasn't his best game against San Francisco, but I don't think anybody's disappointed so far from what we've seen from Karlaftis. In fairness, but yeah, I did put some big expectations on him, so I'll wear that. But
yeah, and then I think some of the Carlos Dunlap is so smart and he's so tall that he could still matter, but I think it's like his burst and production has slightly dipped while Frank Clark's has sort of incrementally risen as the seasons went along. But if they could get another one in there, and maybe it's on the interior, I think Colin Simons is playing fine. Derek Nottie is who he is. Obviously, Chris Jones is the center of all of this. But if they can get somebody who can rotate inside and outside, or if it's just, hey, if you don't think the Chiefs will give up a first-round pick for Brian Burns, then the question becomes: are you comfortable with the second? Are you comfortable with a third? Some people were asking me yesterday, BJ, okay, so when the Bears lose tonight, when can you start calling about, their eligible, on the trade block pass rusher?
Because Robert Quinn's the one to me that makes the most sense. Brian Burns, and not to jump in, Brian Burns to me doesn't make a ton of sense to me, just because you have to give up so many valuable assets. And I'm talking high draft picks, whether it's a first round, they're talking about 2 firsts. That's not going to happen.
Right.
But even if you have to give up a 2 and a 4, you give that up not for a player for a year and a half. That is not an even trade. So you have to extend that player, and you do not know how that player fits into your culture. You do not know his work habits unless you, again, I've been saying this before, unless you know or have a coach that has worked with him in the past or really knows the player well and is willing to vouch for him to give up draft picks plus a lot of money, it doesn't make sense to me. But a Robert Quinn for a late pick, kind of like what James Robinson and just happened with between the Jets and the Jaguars, that kind of deal, that makes sense to me. Going after we say marquee player, Brian Burns is a great player. He's never had more than 9 sacks in a season. So to all of a sudden think you're trading for Von Miller or TJ Watt is not going to be the case. But like Terrell Suggs, that move was during the Super Bowl winning year. That's a Robert Quinn type move that makes a lot more sense to me than the big ones. Do I think they have to make it? No. But do I think Turk Wharton being injured, when you all of a sudden you bring up Taylor Stallworth from the practice squad, he could be a fine player, but adding Robert Quinn in that place instead improves your pass rush and bringing down a player like Josh Allen on the 1 or 2 plays that you need him to make that difference.
Exactly. No, that's perfectly said. I agree with it. Are you willing to give up the compensatory 3rd round pick for Robert Quinn if that's as high as you have to go? That might be a discussion worth having over the next week. So I mean, to win a Super Bowl, I think yes. Does that mean they will trade for somebody at the deadline? Not necessarily, because as much as fans get into the moment, and it's totally understandable. Brett Beach, Mike Bradway, Mike Berganzi, Chris Shea, Brent Tillis, they all have to think not just this season, but obviously the year after that and the year after that.
Yep.
They're working on kind of these 2.5, 3-year plans because there's a lot of money that's going to be put into the salary cap based on Amazon just existing, as I like to say.
It's almost like you knew my next question, because that just takes us perfectly into this. And we talked, last couple of days about the game against the Niners, and there'll still be some more content on KCSN about that. But while we're going into the bye week, and while I have you, and while you perfectly set that up, because we're in the bye week, let's talk a little future. And we talk about that brain trust with Brant and Chris and all those guys behind the scenes who really set this thing up nicely. You look at the draft class that the Chiefs just had this past year. Beautiful. A lot of starters on rookie deals. You got a lot of money with the cap extending the way that you're talking about. So let's look at some pending free agents going into the season on who may get extended, if anyone, during the season. And I'm going to list off, and I'm just dropping this on Nate. So
I have no idea.
Very slowly, so you get some time. He has no idea what's coming. So here are 7 pending free agents.
7, okay.
And yeah. And a couple of them are going to jump out to you, be like, ooh, that could be a guy that we can extend. And it's not, your proclamation on who they're going to extend, who they wouldn't. But if you were making the decision, or who would you not be surprised if they get extended during the season? I'm saying the first one is not going to happen, but Orlando Brown Jr. We know that he's going to be a free agent. He's on the franchise tag right now. You've also got Juju Smith-Schuster, which Matty Lane, our guy on the postgame social, said, extend him now. Just don't let him get on the plane until you pay him some more money. Then you've got a couple of the interior defensive linemen, Derek Nottie, Colin Saunders. Then you've got Rashad Fenton, who hopefully is coming back from injury. Coach said, sounds like post-game, that he should be back after the bye week.
Yeah.
McCole Hardman.
That's the big name to me.
And Juan Thornhill.
In particular.
Those are the 7.
In particular, after this last game's, like his performance in the last game. And Juan Thornhill. Okay. I'm going to go back.
A lot of guys.
It's a lot of guys. And so all the time when it gets fun to do this, especially if like your team wins the Super Bowl, which happened recently, it's like, well, we got to just bring everybody back. You just got to extend everybody. When you have any list of free agents or pending free agents, half of them are already out the door. That's just the way the league works. And most of the time, it might be more than half. So we're thinking 3 to 4 right now as I sort of frame this. I think the Chiefs had something like 22 free agents. Maybe 7 of them came back, based on what their status was going into the new league year in March. And now, obviously, were they with the team in St. Joseph for training camp. So, again, that's less than half. And it's funny to go through this thought process because I really haven't done it since the offseason. But with 7 games of sampling right now, I would think that Juan Thornhill, based on his availability and just staying healthy, and we need to see it moving forward, I think Colin Saunders is a eligible player to be, re-signed because he's actually played a very underrated role pretty well. Next to Chris Jones. Orlando Brown will probably be franchise tagged. Let's just say it. Like, unless he has a absolutely dominant December, January, and a Mitchell Schwartz-like Super Bowl, it would be hard to see them not saying that, hey, 2023's franchise tag is not that different from 2022's.
Do you offer him the same deal if you're the Chiefs based on what we've seen this year?
Well, do
you put the same deal on the table, or do you go less knowing you're really going to piss him off if you offer less than he did last year because of what we've seen so far this year?
Right. And so this is what agents will tell you. We want to put the number out there as quickly as possible if we don't agree to anything. And this is just agents in general, just because now we have a reference point, not for just the player himself, but the position overall. And the Chiefs are a contending team, so now everybody in the league knows how they would have structured or framed it up at the time, which means we can build off of that. And if you give us anything less, as you mentioned, BJ, now we have a reason to be irate because the public knows, even if the player is slightly diminished or he isn't as good as he was the year before, like we just want to know, because now it's incumbent upon you to, like, you know, from the agent's perspective, be fair to my client, to the, to the way, he played on the franchise tag. In fact, he was reliable, consistent, however you want to, present it to the other side. And then it's to the team to say, well, 1 year could be different from the next, and this is our cap situation now, and this is where we feel like the player is, and now we have more information about the player because he played more games for us, and so it's a great back and forth. But I'm glad you asked that. Just like, hey, if they offer him less than what happened a year ago, think about that in your life, ma'am.
Yeah.
Your life, sir. If your employer was like, hey, so you got a little bump, you got a little nice bump last year. It was under a 1 year sort of, let's see you prove it. But hey, it was more money than what you had made earlier in your career. Now we want to take some of that money back.
Yeah. Like, you made a bet, we made a bet, and so far
we don't
might
like
be
that.
on the better end of this one.
We don't like that bet anymore. So yes, I think Orlando Brown will be franchise tagged again, unless something crazy happens. Man,
Here, I'll give you my thought process. I know I just surprised you on this, and I didn't spend a ton of time studying. I don't have a bunch of research or anything. But for me, I like the idea of keeping Thornhill. There's a lot of young guys in the defensive backfield. They, even going back to training camp, you would know because I was reading a lot of your reports. They were pointing to Juan as being the guy that could help them, and Justin Reed also. That the roster composition of how much money you're spending in different positional groups. You could spend some money on a guy like Juan Thornhill that the young guys in that room look up to. And that stuff matters. And you know that more than anyone, being there every day. And Juan is a guy that you give him money. I don't think he's going to change him a whole lot. He's going to do the right things. He's going to be a leader in that room. And same thing with Juju. I think Juju has already shown he's exactly what you wanted him to be. So if of those guys, those two make sense. Colin Saunders makes sense to me because he's young, wasn't drafted super high, still young enough. You can give him a 2 or 3 year deal without a ton of money, make him earn it.
Yeah, I would pick Colin Saunders right now over Derek Notting.
Yeah.
So, knowing that you could obviously draft that position too, depending on what the draft class is in April, to supplement that sort of him leaving, if that is what's going to happen. With Juju Smith-Schuster,
because Justin Watson's a free agent, McCole Hardman's a free agent. So right now, I'll probably screw this up because I'm doing it off the top of my head, but you've got Skyy Moore and MVS as your receivers under contract after this year. And I'd give Juju some money. And I think he likes it here. He's putting up some numbers. He's got his video games. They're killing it. Right. So,
our good friend Seth Kaiser has officially announced him as the Chiefs' #1 receiver after Sunday's game. So, now Juju has been on 1 year deals basically the last 3 years. The last year of his rookie contract, 1 year deal with Pittsburgh, and obviously a 1 year deal with Kansas City. It's going to take a lot for him to sign something past 1 year, but maybe he's found the right situation with Mahomes and Andy Reid. The Chiefs have wanted him for a couple years now. Could you get him on a 2 year deal?
He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
He's 25. So you could give him a 2, maybe 3 year deal, a 2 year deal with that third year option, however they structure that. And then he can make a decision at 27 to go get another big deal.
Yep. And look, the deal would have to suggest that, like, this is legitimate starting NFL receiver money, which right now he's not making. He's on a 1 year deal, which is not, like, it was always weird to me. It was like, how are not other teams like bidding for him? Or maybe he just made it very clear that, hey, I want a 1 year deal. I kind of want to see where things are. And then I think Juju's smart enough to realize that, yes, the cap will go up. So maybe you can take a bigger bite if you're in a Patrick Mahomes offense and things do go well. And obviously teams get to see you on prime time. Who knows? Maybe even in the Super Bowl do well. Maybe that could boost your status when you go back on the market. But yeah, this might be a case where you come to Juju, maybe not right now, but you give him the full season and say, okay, Juju, it's Christmas Eve. We would like to give you a Christmas gift of a 2 year contract. Because I think the front office is smart enough to know that, hey, this game right now is pretty much built on quarterbacks, receivers, and offensive line when it comes to offensive football. So letting him get to free agency makes things much more difficult. And it's totally understandable as to why you would want him for at least another year or two. And of course, if that happens, then that complicates the situation with McCole Hardman, because I don't know what to do with McCole Hardman. I think McCole Hardman fits this offense very, very well. He is also relatively young. He is also really fast. Are you willing to invest in that long term with a 3-year deal? So then it would become what you have right now for the next 2 to 3 years, which is obviously Skyy, MVS, Juju, and McCole. McCole may want like legitimate, I'm out of my rookie contract money, and that's totally fine and understandable. I just think you're gonna, his whole career in Kansas City is a bit fascinating, just because he was a rookie who clearly showed promise. He showed more promise at this time, ladies and gentlemen, than Skyy Moore has. Just want to make that clear. As a rookie, through 7 games.
That question's coming later, Nate. We're not going to talk about Skyy till the fifth burning question.
I'm just saying, through 7 games.
Yep, that's fair.
McCole Hardman was better, or at least more productive, than Skyy Moore is right now. He was a part of that Super Bowl winning team. He didn't have as big of a role in year 2 and year 3. He always says that part of that is, Tyreek Hill, which is okay. Sure, McCole. And then year 4, it's, unfortunately he has his heel injury, but he has shown, toughness and durability, and being just a good teammate. And now he got rewarded yesterday with, his best individual game of his career. And so he's had a very, interesting, last year of his rookie contract, a contract year. But we need to see how these last 10 games go. But I think the monkey wrench in this exercise is McCole Hardman, because you can go either way.
Yeah.
And I can understand why you would make that decision.
Yeah, the money would be fascinating to figure out how each of them would value, what the Chiefs would value he means to them, and what McCole thinks his value would be in this scenario. But we know with Juju that Seth called him the number 1 receiver, whatever you want to call it. He is a trusted person on third down. Right. You throw him. One of the things I love about him, he gets the ball 2 yards short of the first down. Doesn't matter, first down, second down. He's getting a first down. He knows where the sticks are. His spatial awareness when he's on the field is very, very good. And you can make every play, just like we've seen from Juju, as exciting with DraftKings Sportsbook. Nate, the official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can bet any $5 NFL bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. And check this out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. To make things even sweeter, you can throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day all season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code KCSN to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook using code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes for details. All right, Nate, moving on to the third burning question. That one, number 2, was a tough one. I know I surprised you on that. Probably not a lot of time you're spending right now thinking of free agents and extensions and all that stuff, all that offseason stuff. But third one, a little bit easier for you. What's been the most surprising aspect of this Chiefs team through the first 7 games? What's been pleasantly surprising to you from the Chiefs sitting here at 5-2?
Okay, pleasantly surprised. It would be the young DBs. I can't get over how hard it is to play DB in this league.
And we aren't talking McDuffie, which is amazing even of itself. Right. And we're not talking about the first pick.
It's honestly, it is worthy of praise for Dave Merritt and the players. Jalen Watson, he's basically become, I'm saying this in the nicest way, but he's not noticeable on the field as a 7th-round rookie. They're just like, oh, he's on the field. People are more upset that Chris Lamons gave up a reception yesterday than anything Jalen Watson did. Joshua Williams, pretty much being put to the test and, responding in the correct way, even for a guy that had not really played high Division I football. He's coming from a Division II school at HBCU. It's quite the jump in talent level, and the demands on you between games during the week. Brad Cook has been really, really serviceable. Just, hey, do you notice him? Because he's not doing Dan Sorensen things from last season. It's just remarkable. And yes, everybody understands that Trent McDuffie, he basically has to come back for this next game because you get that 3-week window when you come back from short-term IR. He's got the hips, the foot fluidity to play man and zone. I've sort of predicted that, hey, maybe the Chiefs can be even more complex with their cover scheme because McDuffie is so versatile, where obviously Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams is like, this is the principles of what we do. You're tall, press man coverage. Make sure you get your eyes looking the right way.
You think Steve Spagnuolo could be even more aggressive?
Yeah, of course.
He's already sending the house all the time. And now, you know what? I feel even more comfortable. We're going to blitz. Yeah. We're going to go cover 0 60% of the time. Just put him on an island even more.
If Trent McDuffie plays against the Tennessee Titans on November 6th and has a very good first half, you better believe they're going to be on that chalkboard saying, where can we go next in the third quarter to get to the quarterback? So, yeah, it's, L'Jarius Sneed is just good. He's just really, really good. And I know he's not on his rookie deal ending, but you might want to consider him sooner rather than later too.
Get more expensive the longer you wait.
Yeah, exactly. And so It was fascinating to me that Kyle Shanahan was like, oh, we're just going to scheme these things up to beat the nickel cornerback with Deebo Samuel. And the Chiefs are like, he's like our best tackler in the secondary, right? Like no shade to Just Reed. Obviously, Juan Thornhill is they are two capable guys in terms of tackling, making sure that a big play doesn't become worse, which was a bit of an issue, and you're even seeing it with New Orleans now with Tyrann Mathieu. But Juan Thornhill is doing his thing in the back end, being that leader, knowing the scheme better, and disseminating it down to the young guys, or making it relatable, I should say. Obviously, Justin Reed's been, what you've asked for. You didn't give him top safety money, but you gave him like legitimate safety money, and he's been very good so far. The only thing that you can ask for from the secondary is what they did yesterday, which is just get more interceptions. Now, as we said last week, if they didn't get an interception against Jimmy Garoppolo, I was going to be really concerned. They got 2 of them, so we know they're capable if the opportunities present themselves. But yeah, I just think L'Jarius Sneed being like, oh yeah, Deebo Samuel, cool, that's fine, I'll tackle him. He breaks all the tackles, not mine. It's like, oh, Christian.
They just got done facing Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs and Devontae Adams, and they're like, you know what? There's a dude on every team. Same thing with edge rushers. There's always a dude. There's always a guy. Let's move on to the fourth one, Nate, and it's the flip side of this. What's been the most concerning aspect of this team through the first 7 games?
I thought the offensive line was going to be consistent, BJ. I thought the offensive line was going to be out here dominating people week in, week out. Now it's just a hot potato game of can they be good this week? And I mean relatively, like, can they be dominant, right? They've shown it against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They showed it really yesterday in a more creative way against the 49ers. Just ask Nick Bosa how he's feeling. Nick Bosa don't even feel sore, y'all, because he couldn't find the ball. And it was just a creative game plan where it's like, hey, you think we're going to block you? We're not. Hey, you think you're upfield and you're going to make a play? There goes McCole Hardman right by you. Hey, chasing Patrick Mahomes is hard enough. Now they got, spread outs and sprint outs. And I mean, I should look the statistic up. I don't know how many tackles Nick Bosa had, but I imagine the dude didn't need an ice bath. Didn't need one. From what my eyes.
The broadcast kept showing him coming off the field, just shaking his head.
Yeah.
Just like, what the hell is going on?
So go ahead.
Nick Bosa had 4 tackles.
4 tackles. They were probably all in the run game. When they went straight ahead, because they actually ran the ball at him.
They chased it down from the backside. I guess at least 2 or 3 times where they ran away from him and he's chased it down.
Yeah. Okay. So mostly in the run game, which is fine because he's still a very, very good player. But look, I thought this offensive line was going to be great. And greatness is not 3 out of 7 games. And they are all together. The bye week will help them because obviously they'll get some needed rest. We'll see what's going on with Orlando Brown, like if his knee is not an issue, coming off the bye week because he gets a little bit more time to rest and get more treatment on it. Trey Smith has had the pectoral muscle. I thought he played much better than the previous week against the Buffalo Bills. Joe Thuney, I used to call him just a robot last season because the technique was so clean. It was like, oh, like this is sickening for a left guard to be this good all the time, no matter who is on the other side of the field. And then, of course, it's understandable for Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith to have a little bit of some growing pains in year 2 because they were just so excellent in year 1. But yeah, like they were great against Arizona. They were dominant against Tampa Bay, and they were excellent against the 49ers. In stretches against the Chargers and the Raiders, they did just enough to help the offense remain powerful. We'll see where it goes in 10 weeks, and maybe they'll make adjustments to the adjustments that teams presented them early in the season. But I thought the offensive line was going to be like world-class good, and they're just good right now, and there's a difference that they could reach as they move forward.
Fair enough. And I thought besides a couple of plays, I thought the offensive line did a great job against the Niners. I think Mahomes did a great job of staying within the scheme and staying in the pocket. Mahomes has deserved and had his fair share of criticism over the years of kind of drifting out of the pocket, and all of a sudden he's 13 yards deep and everyone's trashing the offensive line. It's like, that ain't the offensive line. They can't stop a guy from running in a straight line, basically, to sack the quarterback. But fifth burning question, I teased this one earlier, but how concerned should we be with Skyy Moore returning punts? Because not like he's done this in college. Like, it's not like he's shown throughout his career, like, oh, he just made a couple mistakes. This guy's not comfortable back there right now. I mean, at what point, and I know Coach Reed said the right things and he's our guy, doesn't mean that McColl might not be back there against the Titans at some point. And we've talked about giving grace to Skyy Moore because now we're sitting here talking about, well, we want McColl back there. McColl had some of the same issues that he kept not catching it and letting it bouncing, and it was driving Dave Tobe crazy. And so what's the answer? Like, do you expect him to still be out there against the Titans when they go out on Sunday Night Football? And if not, is McColl the next guy?
Yeah, it's really cool because you're like, how do we simplify it for the rookie? How do we make it to where he can start to have confidence and have productive play after play after play? Not this, hey, he did really well on this one snap on offense. And yes, we've seen the blunders on special teams. Here's the thing, BJ. The punting in the NFL has gotten better. You ain't catching punts from a high schooler. He was in the MAC last year. I don't know if he didn't take a ton of punts back, but these punters are better than the punters in the MAC conference. It's interesting to me that both of these muffs occurred on the road, and that they occurred with his back to the end zone. So he clearly knows the worst case scenario, and he's had either some technical issues or his eyes are sort of deceiving him in some ways as to how he judges the ball coming down. Yeah. Teams see this on film. So the easiest way for teams to not continue to study it on film is to stop putting him out there, or for him to go nowhere near the ball if his body is anywhere within the 10-yard line. It's a copycat league. Teams study this for hours. They understand the game in the situation. That is why if you rewatch the game, the 49ers punter and long snapper were as hyped as you could ever see those two players be in a game, because guess what? We studied this on tape, and it occurred again in a very similar situation. And unfortunately, Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't do what Matt Ryan could on third down in the red zone. But, I think if McColl is fully healthy, you probably want to rely on him more. It's fascinating to me, too, that BJ on the punt after the safety, I believe it was McCole Hardman who took that return, not Skyy Moore. So they may have already tipped their hand in some respects because the 49ers never punted in the second half because they either scored or they turned the football over, or they were sacked in the end zone. It's okay if you're going to say, hey, these are your formations, these are your packages, these are your routes, and if you want to simplify it that way for him, great. And then say, hey, we may come back to kick return or punt return a couple weeks from now. Just test it out or see it again, or we want to see you make progress in practice before we put you back in that spot. But I think it's fair to ask McCole Hardman to be the leading punt returner. There was times in training camp where Trent McDuffie took some of those reps, but obviously with his hamstring injury, he's not been available for such. So even if Trent McDuffie were fully healthy, they may have went to Trent McDuffie for some of these games. Obviously having to force to stick with Skyy because of McColl's injury. But those are the three best options from what Tobe sort of told us in training camp. And I know Marcus Kemp is back on the roster. So he's like kind of a sneaky, maybe, and when in doubt, let it go.
Don't dive for it.
It only makes it worse. And you could face a potential injury too. I thought about that yesterday. Like, it is such a scramble and a mad dash for that ball once you muff it that you are more vulnerable than you would be on most NFL plays.
That's a good point. That is a good point, and something that we will watch for as we get ready. I know that maybe Jay Harris, equipment guy for the Chiefs that punted at Missouri Western, that's out there punting during practice. He might be working some extra during this bye week, working on his end over punts and all that good stuff, trying to get Skyy more comfortable back there, because now it's a mental thing at this point. He knows he's made some mistakes, and you don't want that to happen. So understand why coach and everybody wants to say all the positive things. And he's done it in practice. Obviously he's shown enough that he's done it at times, can physically do it, but got to do it when the adrenaline's kicked in and you're in a stadium full of people screaming at you. So hopefully he gets comfortable or they figure it out, because that is one area that you don't want to come up and bite you later in the season or even into the playoffs when everything's magnified even more. But Nate, appreciate you, my guy, for joining us here. That's Nate Taylor from The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter by Nate Taylor. You can find his work at The Athletic. Make sure to subscribe to that and listen to his podcast, Times Hours with Seth and Josh, and all of those good dudes over there. But we appreciate everybody for listening and tuning into this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're listening to the podcast. We appreciate your support of what we've got going on at KC Sports Network. We've got plenty more great content throughout the week, covering the bye week for you with a lot of good Chiefs stuff. Matt Hamilton, Matt Cass will be breaking down the offense. Derek Johnson, Mike DeVito, Craig Stout will be breaking down the defense coming up here later in the week. But make sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll see y'all next time.